Hello again, it's Snoozles here, and I hope you've been having a good day, because I certainly have. You see, when I woke up this morning, I heard Danny and Sara in the TV room, and they were counting together 10, 9, 8, but they were counting backwards. Why were they doing that? I walked into the room as they finished counting 3, 2, 1. Then they both said, "Blast off!" On the TV, a spaceship was taking off, flying up into the clouds, and it was exciting to watch. Danny said, "I think I might like to be an astronaut someday and fly that ship around our planet. Or maybe to other planets," Sara said. "Girls can be astronauts too, you know." "How about you, Snoozles? You could be an Astrodog." They both laughed, but that got me thinking about it. And after they had gone to school, that thought kept floating around in my mind. Later in the afternoon, I was lying down in our front yard, feeling the warm sun on my back, when my friend Rocky, the big St. Bernard dog who lives next door, came over to see me and said, "What are you dreaming about today, Snoozles?" "Oh, lots of things," I said. "Big things." "You're always dreaming about big things," he said. I heard a voice, a girl's voice, coming from behind me. "Is this stick big enough for you, Snoozles?" It was Sara. Was she already home from school? Had I been napping all afternoon? Sara liked throwing sticks for me to chase, and the bigger the better. Some sticks were almost as big as her arm, but this one was almost as big as Sara herself. It was like a branch from a tree. She drew it back like an arrow on a bow, then let it fly. And it was going a long way, over the fence, almost out to the forest behind our house. I'd never seen her throw a stick, a really big stick, so far. Rocky began running toward it and said, "I'll beat you to it." And I shouted, "The chase is on." I caught up with him quickly, then ran ahead. An English bloodhound like myself could run faster than a St. Bernard, and I jumped on the stick before he did. But this stick was so big, I didn't know if I could carry it all by myself. And Rocky was thinking the same thing, because he took one end of the stick in his mouth, and I took hold of the other end, and together we ran back to where Sara was standing. She said, "Good job, my boys. Now let's see if you can catch up to it this time." She threw it with all her might, straight upward, and that stick went sailing toward the clouds. Rocky and I watched it go further and further away. Where will it come down? When will it come down? Will it ever come down? Maybe not, because it was shooting up through the clouds now, and Sara said, "That one is headed for the stars. It may be time for a space chase." "Come on, Rocky," I said. "Let's go see Dallas." There was an older couple from Texas who had 2 cute Cocker Spaniel dogs named after 2 big cities in Texas, Dallas and Houston. And they had a space center behind their house. At least that's what those puppies had told us. And it wasn't far away, less than a mile. We took off running, faster than the speed of light. Well, actually, light travels at 186,000 miles every second. So we were not quite up to speed there, but we were going pretty fast. And a few minutes later, we were barking outside their house. Dallas came outside first, followed by Houston, and I said, "You've got to help us. We have to go into space right now." Dallas said, "And why do you have to do that?" "Because Sara was playing a game of fetch with us, and that's where she threw the stick." Rocky added, "Yes, and you know how important a game of fetch is to me. If somebody throws a stick and I can't fetch it, I go a little crazy." "All right," said Houston. "We've got a rocket on the launch pad, ready and waiting." They took us around back and helped us put on our Astrodog suits, which were bright and shiny like tinfoil. Then we walked through a tunnel and underneath a sign that said, "Only the best and bravest Astrodogs pass through these halls." I liked the sound of that, and I held my head up high, proud to be one of the chosen dogs who had the right stuff. The rocket was as tall as a big building, and we rode in an elevator all the way up to where we could step through the hatch and into the capsule on the very top of the rocket. "Good luck," said Dallas. "Do you have any final words before you blast off?" Final words? I didn't like the sound of that. This isn't going to be dangerous, is it?" I asked. "Well, sure it is," he said. "That's what makes it interesting. Now, final words? Remember, dogs everywhere around the world will be watching you." "Okay," I said. "This will be one small step for a dog and one giant leap for dog kind, or all kinds of dogs, everywhere." "That'll do," said Dallas, as he stepped out of our cabin and closed the hatch. Then we heard the voice over the speaker. "This is Houston with the countdown. 10, 9, 8, 5. "Wait a minute," I said. "Houston, we have a problem already. You don't seem to be able to count backwards." "I know," Houston said. "I have no problem counting up to 10, but on the way down, that's always been a challenge for me." "Then allow me," and I started over with 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, and Rocky joined in. 4, 3, 2, 1, blast off! The engines roared, and the rockets fired and rumbled and shook us in our seats as we lifted off the ground. We were gaining speed, quickly. Everything below us was getting smaller and smaller as we rose up into the clouds. A minute later, we were above the clouds, way above the clouds, and we were traveling at over 500 miles an hour. Rocky said, "Snoozles, I have a sudden urge to stick my head out the window." "Resist that urge," I said, "and just hold on." Now, the force of gravity is what holds us down to the ground. It makes things fall to the ground. And we were going up so fast, fighting against that force of gravity, that it was pulling back the skin on my face, back over my teeth. I must have looked ridiculous. Rocky looked at the gauge for our speed and said, "We're not going 500 miles an hour. It's 5,000 miles an hour now." But we weren't feeling that speed very much now, that tug of gravity. because when you get far enough away from our planet, you couldn't feel gravity anymore. It was gone. I said, "Do me a favor, Rock, and toss me a bone here." Dallas and Houston had stocked our ship with a jar full of little doggy bone treats, and when Rocky took off the lid, the bones began floating out of the jar, floating in the air all around us. Now that there was no gravity to make them fall to the floor, we unstrapped our seatbelts and we began floating around inside our cabin too. This was something that I had never felt before, that most people had never felt. And at first it made me a little queasy, a little sick to my stomach. But when I relaxed and just enjoyed this feeling, it was wonderful. We were slowly turning over, doing backward somersaults, then forward and to the side. And when one of the doggy bones would float by, we'd open our mouths and chew on it as we kept spinning. We were 200 miles above the ground now. Rocky was looking out the window and said, "I see the stick, Snoozles, right up ahead. Can you see it too?" Yes, there it was, floating in space just like we were, tumbling end over end very slowly. Everything seemed to move in slow motion up here in space, even though we were traveling at 17,000 miles an hour. That's how fast you have to be going to keep circling around the Earth. I said, "Let's activate the arm, Rocky, and fetch that stick." There was a big, long mechanical arm outside the ship, and I took hold of the control that would make it move, which looked kind of like a joystick that the kids use to play video games. I moved the control forward, but the mechanical arm was not moving at all. I turned on the microphone to communicate with our team back on the ground and said, "Houston, we have another problem. The arm isn't working. It won't respond to the controller." A voice came over the speaker. "Snoozles, this is Houston. And yes, I've been meaning to get around to fixing that, but I have yet to figure it out. So right now it's just there for looks." "What? But it looks pretty good out there, right?" "Yes, Houston, it looks very nice, but that doesn't help us." Rocky said, "What are we going to do now, Snoozles?" I reached for my helmet and said, "You stay here and fly the ship. I'm going for a little walk." A dog always loves going for walks, but this would be a first for me, a spacewalk. I put the glass helmet all the way over my head. There would be air inside the helmet so I could breathe, because there's no air in space. And then Rocky opened the doggy door and I slipped outside the ship, and I was floating in space with a long leash tied around my waist so I wouldn't float away. Then I pushed off from the side of the ship, and I was on my way to fetch that stick. As I slowly floated toward it, I looked down at our planet. It was like a big blue ball floating around in space, just like me, and it was beautiful to look at. Most of our planet is covered with water, the oceans, and the land formed the continents, as we call them. There was North America, where I lived, and South America below that. then, when I looked across that big ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, I could see Europe and Africa below that. I stopped for a moment just to think about it, to think about how everything was going around and around. Our planet that we live on, Earth, is turning all the way around once every day. And the moon is going around the Earth once every month, which is about 30 days. And Earth and our moon together, they're traveling around the sun every year. How many days is that? Well, the last time I looked, it was 365 days. 1 year. That's how long it takes for us to go around or to orbit the sun. Rocky was talking into a microphone inside the ship, and I could hear his voice inside my helmet. "I'll come out and help you carry the stick. Remember how heavy it is?" I said, "Rocky, this is space, and nothing is heavy up here. That stick will be as light as a feather, even lighter than a feather, if you can imagine that." I finally caught up with the stick, took hold of it with my teeth, then pulled on my leash and floated back toward the ship. Or was I? The ship was gone, and I was floating down now, down toward the ground. I had suspected that I might be dreaming my space adventure, and now I knew for sure that this was a dream. And it was ending like so many of my dreams would end, with me floating down to our house and landing in my bed. And as I floated down, I was thinking about how our planet is like a spaceship, not in the way we usually think about it, but it is traveling around in space, and you and me and everyone on this planet, we're all astronauts and astrodogs together along for the ride. And that's how I'm going to think about this beautiful blue ball spinning around the sun as our spaceship, planet Earth. Come and take a ride and see the universal mystery. And when a year is done, you'll have flown around the sun with me on our spaceship planet Earth. On our spaceship planet Earth. Floating up above the sky, watching all the stars go by. We'll take good care of her, and together we'll forever fly on our spaceship planet Earth.